Welcome to Forensic Friday,
where we examine the intersection of true crime, psychology, and the heart of being human in the middle of it all. So Nat was just telling me her baby's the size of a Barbie convertible.
Yeah. I have two apps, and one of the apps switches themes. So, Barbie convertible or Hawaiian pineapple,
Oh.
or I don't know what that is, and it doesn't look good, so I'm not going to say that one.
Oh.
Or a New England cottontail rabbit.
You have a rabbit in your stomach.
I know.
That's nuts.
I know. I'm going to stick to the pink convertible.
Baby Gray.
I know.
She's getting so big. Well, we need to earmuff her today because this one's scary.
Oh, she's
Earmuff
all in.
Gray.
She's
Earmuff.
all in.
She's going to come out like a total baddie with a true crime obsession.
Uh-huh.
She's going to look at the doctor and be like, have you had a background check? I don't know if you should be in my area. You know, we need to make sure you're all right.
Mm-hmm. She's gonna be
Yeah.
like, I don't like your vibe.
She's going to pick up on everything. She's going to be super intuitive. And I think she's going to have a wicked side eye if she hangs out with the two of us too much.
Yeah. Well,
You
and
know,
her dad also has that.
you know what? He does. Preston has a mean side eye. He really does.
He's particular.
Very.
You wouldn't know this about him.
Oh, I've seen it.
I know, because he can hang in any crowd and talk to any human, but
Yes.
it takes him actually a minute to like
Yeah.
warm up to people.
Oh, yeah. But when he does, he's so fun.
I know, he is so fun.
It's so fun. So, as we promised you on Wednesday, we are doing Night Stalker today.
Yes.
This is one of the scariest people in the history of people.
No, he's insane.
He really is. And I think the goal today is going to be to, talk about what he did, but not the specifics actually, because the specifics are really brutal and gross. And it's just, I'm not going to glamorize this guy in that fashion.
No.
The reason he's interesting to me is because most of us, our society, we are interested in serial killers because we are interested in psychopathy. This kind of behavior is not your average bear and it's scary. So it gets our nervous system kind of peaked. And I think for
Mhm.
women, there's a little bit of a survival fixation with scary movies and scary stories because we're constantly trying to figure out how to keep ourselves safe. And this is
Yep.
part of it. If I hear these stories, what would I do? And what are these people like? And how do I protect myself? So it gets our nervous system all jazzed up. And
Yep.
our nervous system doesn't really know the difference between fear and excitement in some ways. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's why people are drawn to scary movies because that line is kind of razor thin. And that's part of why we're so fixated. So
Mm-hmm.
we're going to kind of start at the beginning. And Nat and I are both going to work through this. I did a little more of the background on him as a human, but Nat, you know about this guy too.
Yeah, some. I haven't watched that Netflix series in a long time, but it'll come back to me.
I actually, okay, here's my confession. I didn't watch it, and I'll tell you why.
Good. I'm glad you didn't.
This guy scares the bejesus out of me. I don't like him at all. I don't like him. His
Mm-hmm.
face is the stuff of nightmares. And I just really don't like hearing about his crimes as much. And here's the thing about psychopaths, okay? We don't need to study the exact thing that he did with a weapon to know how he functions. We don't need to do that. People study that, of course, but Nat and I are not crime scene technicians. So we're
Mm-hmm.
not going to get into all of the horrible things that he did to people, but we are going to talk about some of the themes. So if you have a history of victimization, if you've had a scary attack in your background, I would encourage you to fast forward if you need to. You can skip this one and listen to one of our happy little minis. If you're interested in this, though, I want to encourage you as we're getting started to think about how somebody ends up like this. How does
Mm-hmm.
this happen? And you can join us on this crazy ride of the Night Stalker. Okay. There were a few other names that people dubbed him with. So the Night Stalker is Ricardo Leyva Munoz Ramirez, better known
Mhm.
as Richard Ramirez. So he
Yep.
was called the Night Stalker. He was also called the Walk-in Killer and the Valley Intruder because of the way that he would enter residences to hurt people.
Mhm.
So we're going to come into a little bit more of his history later. But when we talk about what he did, he was convicted of 13 counts of murder, 5 attempted murders, 11 sexual assaults, and 14 burglaries.
That's
And that's
wild.
just when they swept him up finally in like 1984. So when you really think about this, he was a prolific murderer.
Mhm.
And these are just the things that we know about. There's a lot of stuff we don't know that he did. He was sentenced to 19 death sentences. So he was on death row. He died on June 7th, 2013 from complications of B-cell lymphoma while awaiting execution on California's death row. He died from lymphoma.
Okay.
So ding dong, the Wicked Witch is dead, right? Like I'm very happy he is no longer. See you never. You know?
Yeah, he's pretty terrible.
See you never. Now, I don't have a ton of empathy for serial killers, just to be frank. I want to put that out there. I don't think we're supposed to. I do seek to understand the behavior, though. I think that is helpful to my brain.
I think the 1% of empathy that I have for some
Yep.
is that most of them were abused pretty significantly. But
Yes.
that's, I don't have, maybe empathy is the wrong word. Sympathy.
Yep.
Because empathy is trying to understand how they feel. Um,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
I feel bad for them that they were abused, but you still know what not to do.
When we look at his background, we do see that now. We see that there was harm that came to him. He witnessed a lot of harm
Yeah.
and had a psychological predisposition to mental illness. So this is where those two things come together. So
Yeah.
when we talked about criminogenic needs, he's kind of fascinating because
Hmm.
this would be an untreatable offender for a lot of reasons, in my
Yeah.
opinion, because the
Yeah.
stuff that he was struggling with is kind of hard to treat. We could treat his trauma, but he had a pretty significant personality disorder and some other issues that we'll get into. So he was born in El Paso, Texas on February 29th, 1960, to Mexican immigrant parents, Mercedes Munoz and Julian Tapia Ramirez. He was the youngest of 5 children. His father was a railway laborer and an alcoholic who would have these just fits and would abuse his wife and children. He was brought up a Catholic and began smoking marijuana and drinking alcohol at the age of 10. Now, Nat and I live in Colorado, which is a marijuana friendly state, if there ever
Yeah.
was one. Marijuana certainly doesn't turn people into serial killers, but
No.
marijuana in the brain of a 10-year-old, marijuana and alcohol in the brain of a 10-year-old, and depending on how much he was consuming, for sure had an impact on his brain development.
We'll be right back. Eye-Opening Moments podcast are real-life stories of adversity, encounters, and perspectives. They are moments that can lift your spirits, give you some food for thought, or move you. For the introspective mind that likes to reflect, discover, and find solutions or meaning in a complex life, listen to Eye-Opening Moments podcasts.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and I mean, marijuana, you and I have seen people have mental health, um, significant like manic episodes and different type of psychotic episodes with marijuana being in their system
Yes.
because of whatever their diagnosis already is, right?
Yes. Well, and what do we know about marijuana? and schizophrenia or psychosis.
Well, it can increase those symptoms.
It increases those symptoms and it can facilitate the onset of schizophrenia.
Mm-hmm.
It really can. People don't believe this. I know if you're a weed defender, that's fine. I don't have a big issue with weed. But if you actually look at the brain science and the studies, marijuana in a young brain of someone who's predisposed to schizophrenia can absolutely speed up, if not create, the onset of schizophrenia. And not everyone with a predisposition actually ends up with schizophrenia. So that's just something to pay attention to. If you have a family history of that, I would leave the pot alone.
Yes.
Don't you think?
That would be smart.
That's our takeaway. Put down the pot. If you have a family history of psychosis, just put it down.
Yes.
Don't mess with it.
I've seen it with my own two eyes.
Don't start nothing, won't be nothing. That's what I always say.
But I've seen psychosis with someone who was literally only using marijuana, and it is terrifying. I'm just going to tell you the thing.
It's really scary. Also, the notion that marijuana prevents people from being violent, we can debunk that right now because the vast majority of the domestic violence offenders that we see use marijuana and had marijuana in their system at the time of their offense.
Yeah.
So it does not prevent violence. It just doesn't. Yeah. So whatever. You don't have to defend it to us. I'm just
still get angry and mad, and you actually get more irritable, especially if you're coming down.
Yep. Or you can't get it.
Or you can't get it. Oh my gosh.
I know. We've seen that. I know somebody who threw a TV because he was in withdrawal.
Oh yeah. No. I don't know if my brother would be okay with me sharing this. He's, sober and doing awesome and big in the fitness world and all that. But when he was using marijuana and when he was getting sober from all the things, oh my gosh. I remember Preston was like, he's mean. I've never seen him like this. I was like, I know, but it's because he's depriving his brain of something that calmed him down.
For years.
But then it actually increased his anxiety, which is why he stopped using.
Well, because it does that too.
I know, y'all.
The whole thing. I know the brain's complicated. Okay,
you know what? We should have Mason on here to talk about some of his history.
We should have Mason and also the guy who wrote Weed Inc. You know that that's like forever on my shelf. Were you with me when we heard him speak?
No, but I was at the job that we both worked at when I think you saw him.
Yeah, it was at a conference.
Yeah.
And I saw this presentation and he did such a wonderful job of talking about how to approach marijuana in the landscape that we have in Colorado where it's accepted. Yeah. It's actually more acceptable in Colorado in some ways to smoke weed than to drink alcohol because we have a lot of really healthy people who are like, alcohol's terrible for you, but weed I smoke every day, right?
Yeah.
So
just hilarious.
There's a psychiatrist named Michael Stone who described Ramirez as a made psychopath instead of a born psychopath.
Fascinating.
So I'm going to explain that. Ramirez had schizoid personality disorder. And again, schizoid personality disorder means nothing in terms of violence. So I want to be very clear. The disorder is not what made this happen. It contributed along with a whole lot of trauma.
Right.
So trauma plus this disorder contributed to his behavior. I just want to be clear. But he did have schizoid personality disorder, which contributed to his indifference to the suffering of his victims and also his untreatability.
Yep.
So schizoid is notoriously hard to treat. People are rarely compliant with their medications, so that's difficult. So in this case, he has a disorder that's actually making him less aware of emotion with a disorder that's difficult to treat. And he's also unlikely to be compliant with any of this due to some of his upbringing, which we're going to get into.
Yeah, yeah.
Ramirez was knocked unconscious and almost died on multiple occasions before he was 6 years old.
Wow.
Okay, so this little boy, if we separate from
like just from home violence or just violence around him?
Home violence. So remember, his father was an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Abused the children. So before 6, he'd already been knocked unconscious and almost died on multiple occasions. Because of this, he developed temporal lobe epilepsy, aggressivity, and hypersexuality.
I don't understand I mean, I do understand why that impacts them. I don't understand how a human can do that to children. I just do not.
I know.
This is a quick tangent.
I mean,
Janine and I,
we see it sometimes in terms of like distress tolerance, right? Like
yes.
I can't control my emotions. I'm angry. Maybe my parents smacked me around too, and so I act out. But yeah, it's hard to imagine.
Well, and here's the thing, quick tangent. Janine and I focus mostly on adult cases with adult victims.
Yes.
I mean, besides, John Bonet and just a few here and there with kids involved, um, because they're so hard to talk about.
Oh, it's hard to talk about. And I
I
think,
can't even imagine a little 6-year-old boy or, coming up to being 6, almost being killed numerous times.
yeah, I mean, this is an extreme case of abuse towards a very little
Yes,
child.
yeah.
And we do not see this very often, even in the domestic violence population. We do see child abuse,
Oh, 100%,
but to this
100%.
extent, no.
Well,
I
no,
wouldn't
'cause
say we see this very
if
often.
we saw this to this extent, they'd be in prison.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what happened to Ramirez? Okay, so we picture this little boy almost died on multiple occasions,
Hmm.
struggling with his brain. Okay.
Mhm.
So then things just get worse,
Hmm.
as if that's possible, but it gets worse. When he's 12, he's taken under the wing of his older cousin, Miguel Angel Mike
Okay.
Valles. Okay.
Okay.
He was a soldier in the US Army who himself had already become a serial killer and rapist during the Vietnam War.
Hmm.
So this is a person, Ramirez, his cousin, who he goes to be with,
Mm-hmm.
was a serial killer and rapist in Vietnam and
Mm.
boasted about it. He participated in war crimes in Vietnam, and he shared Polaroid pictures with Ramirez
Mm.
showing the women that he'd raped, murdered, dismembered, decapitated.
Wow.
Yep. So, my gosh, when we talk about how pornography exposure can shape the trajectory of a child, what the hell does this do to a 12-year-old?
Yeah.
And when you think about he's 12 years
Mm.
old, his sex hormones are starting to come online, and this is the content he's being exposed to.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So,
Mm.
what do you think about that? Because that is different than any of the offenders we've talked about so far.
And what was it that he was exposing him to specifically?
Okay, look at pictures of Vietnamese women that he'd raped, murdered, dismembered, and decapitated under age
Okay.
12.
Okay, that other people have done, not the cousin. Got
No, the
it.
cousin did it.
Oh, the cousin raped, murdered, and decapitated these people?
Say that again. You guys, Natalie just caught up with what I'm saying and she's losing it. Okay.
I'm trying to follow the thing that we have.
This is the thing we talked about with ADHD.
So I was like, okay, so he was showing this was my brain. I was like, okay, so family member, I didn't catch which family member. Family member was showing him, someone who took him in, gnarly decapitation pornography. And I was like, okay, so he was showing him porn.
He was, but it was the porn that he made by killing the women.
But it was his cousin who was
It was
doing
his
this.
cousin. It's the cousin.
That did not compute in my brain. The other stuff computed of like family member showing him insane porn.
Yes.
But the fact that it was the cousin's actual own like home videos of porn.
Basically, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
I know. So your face, this is what's funny. So, we talked about this in the ADHD episode. I read like every fourth word, and
Yeah, and
I
I'm trying to catch up.
extraordinarily fast. And Nat's reading like a normal human, and trying to get where I'm going.
Yeah,
He's-
y'all, it's I catch most of the things,
yeah, but that is the worst.
but I needed to
I've
catch all
never-
of that. That's why we needed to revisit because I didn't catch the fact that it was the cousin's home videos.
Mike. That was Mike's home videos from Vietnam.
That's insane.
Technically Polaroid pictures.
Well, and what's crazy is the cousin takes him in,
Yep.
right? Probably because he wants to keep his cousin safer, but he's not.
Well, and Ramirez later told investigators, prison staff, someone that he came into contact with while he was incarcerated, that he found himself being fascinated, not repulsed. So most
Oh my God, it's so
people
gross.
on the face of the earth would see that and be like, absolutely not. Immediate no, what's wrong with you, bro? Or I'm going to run away, see you never, live under a bridge. I'm not going to deal
Right.
with this. He was more kind of fascinated and I think got fixated on these images himself.
Mm,
Okay.
okay.
Mike, son of a bitch, Mike taught his cousin, again, Ramirez, taught him some of his military skills. Thanks for that, Mike, including stealth and kill tactics.
Cool. Also, how are any of these guys married? But we'll continue.
Is he married? Oh,
Yeah,
he is. Oh, we'll get to that. It's bad. Oh, now you're reading ahead.
Now I'm ahead.
Now
I gotta stay ahead of you now.
before I get there. Okay, so around this time, okay, Ramirez was trying to escape his father's violence. So he's still kind of with his father, kind of with Mike, going back and forth. I
Okay.
think Mike was like a trusted older cousin, right? Like Mike took him in kind of like a little brother. But
But did
Ramirez,
more damage. Anyway.
Mike's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Mike is someone that needed to be mowed over with a car. I'm just saying, not endorsing violence, but I mean, he's sex offender island, like cannot play with others, right?
Right.
Okay. So Ramirez is still having to interact with his father. His father's still royally violent. So Ramirez would go sleep in a local cemetery, as one does.
Okay.
Dad's violent. I'm just going to go sleep on somebody's grave. That sounds cool. His father would tie him to a crucifix in a cemetery overnight as punishment.
Ramirez's father.
Yeah.
That is in
Night Stalker's dad would tie him to a crucifix in a cemetery as punishment.
Here's, you know what, y'all?
We're just getting warmed up, by the way. I have 3 more paragraphs of this nonsense.
Being pregnant, and I tried to get pregnant. This was like not something that I wasn't trying to do. Being
That was
pregnant,
intentional.
this was a very intentional pregnancy.
Yes.
I cannot, it genuinely, when I go to heaven someday, hopefully long time from now,
Yeah.
I'm going to ask Jesus, why some people?
Oh, I know.
Why? Like some people who really want kids can't have them. And then some people who genuinely don't, and I'm going to be kind of an ass right now, do not deserve to walk this earth, have kids, and then abuse the shit out of them.
No, it's a nightmare.
It makes me crazy. And
Now,
then people say stupid crap like, well, maybe they're just not meant to have kids. I'm like, no. People who have kids sometimes shouldn't have kids, are not meant to have kids.
tell them
And
now.
still have them. I'm sorry.
I know. You're right.
Makes me so mad.
Lord knows I have my soapboxes. I feel you, sister.
I know.
Here's the thing. We talk about how people try to do a little bit better than their parents.
This isn't one of those situations.
Well, it's hard to imagine. Your face. You knew what I was going to say. It is very hard to imagine someone worse than Ramirez's father and cousin. It is hard to imagine 2 people worse.
Do you think it was worse?
I don't.
I don't
know.
either.
At a minimum, same. I mean,
I would guess the same.
But I cannot imagine worse.
It's insane.
This is already one of the worst things I've ever read. Okay.
I know.
So Mike and his wife, because he's married. I don't know how that happened, but Jesse married his wife, Jesse. They have a son named Miguel Valles, who passed away at the age of 5 in an accidental gas explosion. It is unknown.
The gas explosion.
I don't know, but I have so many questions. It's unknown it is unknown if Ramirez, as a child, ever interacted with his younger cousin before his death.
If y'all could see my face, I'm like, it was probably in the house.
Yep. It's okay. Could be a freak accident. However, the odds of having people this sick in a house in the first place together is like 1 in 10 million. I don't know.
No, like there was something sketch going on.
I would also imagine that Ramirez didn't like the idea of somebody coming into his area. You
Oh
know what
yeah.
I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I can't imagine that that was something that they wanted,
No.
right? So anyway, um, shortly after Ramirez turned 14, he's like, you know what? My brain's a hot garbage mess. Let's throw some LSD in there.
Woo.
His brain is a nightmare.
Mm.
I wonder if they took his brain after he died. I hope they did
I
and
wonder.
studied it because I mean, this is some hot nonsense. I mean, I don't even know all of the parts of his brain that had to be screwed up to turn out this way.
Mm-mm.
He and Mike continued to bond over their shared use of drugs and alcohol. So if
Right.
disgusting Polaroids weren't enough, we are also using drugs and drinking together.
Mm.
It's during this time that Ramirez began to get interested in Satanism and
Cool.
occulty things.
Yay.
Mhm. So he goes into adolescence and his sexuality, his sexual fantasies are starting to merge with violence, bondage, murder, mutilation, rape. That's all existing together in his brain. The seeds were planted when he was younger. It's been watered for years with all of this nonsense, and now we have a full-blown psychopath in the making, serial killer in the making, right? So when he was in school, he took a job at the Holiday Inn and he would use the master key to rob people who are sleeping in their rooms. I know it's so scary. Your face. So scary. So unbelievably scary that you could just be sleeping at your local Holiday Inn and this jackass comes in with a key
That's so
and
crazy.
robs you. Mhm. Yep. He also did some gnarly, awful things, molested kids in an elevator in the hotel, that kind of stuff, but he
Yeah.
never got reported or prosecuted for all this crap.
Okay.
Finally, he gets fired because he attempted to rape a woman in her hotel room and was caught by the victim's husband. Okay, the husband beat the shit out of
I
Ramirez.
was just gonna ask,
No, he
like,
did. I
okay,
mean, he beat him up.
getting fired is probably the best thing that happened to him in that
Yeah, no,
situation.
he got beat up. And we already know his
Yeah.
brain's not great to start with, and that didn't help.
Dude, yeah.
So he got beat up. But the criminal charges were dropped because the couple lived out of state and they didn't want to go back to Texas to testify against him. They decided we don't want to like travel back and forth and do the court case thing, so they dropped the charges.
Okay, I understand that. Like, and you don't want to like relive the trauma or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think if anyone's in this situation,
Yep.
I would encourage you to talk to a therapist,
Yes.
first and foremost. And second, talk about what the benefits, the pros and cons of doing both.
Yeah.
Or there of not going or going, because what sucks about people who don't go to their own court cases when they're the victim is oftentimes the person will get off
Yep.
and nothing will happen,
Mm-hmm.
which makes it, yeah, I mean, it just continue. It's, how do I say this? It enables them to continue with the behaviors.
Mm. Yes.
That's not your fault at all.
It's not your
You
job
have
to stop it.
You have a right to do what you think is best for you. And just keep in mind, justice doesn't happen that way.
Well, yeah, and I think that's the thing that that's the
Yes.
impact of Giselle saying, I'm going to show up and
And
I'm going to be public because the shame is not mine to carry. It's the
no,
offenders to carry. I'm going to nail their asses to the floor. And
exactly.
I do wish that had happened in this case. Again, it's not this woman's job.
Not at all.
Hats off to the husband for beating up Ramirez, you know.
For sure.
But I mean, also this is a 14-year-old kid. I don't know if that had anything to do with it. I still would nail his ass to the floor, but that's
Oh,
me.
that's
That's not
fair.
everyone. But he's
fair.
14. He's 14. After 2 years of influence from Mike and his violent father,
Mike
from
is a
12 to 14,
jackwagon.
look at how we're escalating. Look at how we're
Yeah.
escalating in his behavior.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about 15. Let's talk about what happened when he was 15.
Okay.
Ramirez was present on May 4th, 1975, when Mike fatally shot his second wife, 26-year-old Valles, which I don't know what her first name was, but second wife. I don't know who his first wife is. But anyway, um, shot his second wife in the face with a handgun during a domestic argument.
Mike.
So Ramirez was with Mike, and Mike shot his wife in the face with a handgun.
That's insane.
Ramirez told people later that it wasn't really traumatic for him, and he was fascinated, just like the pictures, because he's been desensitized to violence.
Yeah.
This is one thing I'll say about video games, first person shooter. You are doing what the military does to prepare people to go to war. Like, the more you see images like that, the less it matters to your brain.
Yeah.
And he was already wired to be pretty unaffected, in fairness, but he's also been practicing for a long time.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh my gosh.
But after the shooting, Ramirez does withdraw a bit from people. Mike was later found not guilty by reason of insanity, with the shooting attributed to PTSD from his military service. I have opinions about that, but listen, we love our vets. We have an episode coming up about a vet that is somebody that is so lovable and interesting. That's a tough sell to me. That's a tough sell. I don't know. I don't know about that. I'm not saying he didn't have PTSD from Vietnam. Vietnam was horrific, but
He
the
shot her here.
PTSD
No.
does not explain the shit he did in Vietnam, where he inflicted all kinds of PTSD, but also shooting his wife in the face. I'm sorry. There's a lot of people with PTSD who don't do that.
Well, and so the videos that he showed, sorry, I'm backtracking. The videos that he showed Ramirez, those never got what?
They're photos.
Photos of him raping and decapitating women. That was all in Vietnam, right? So he didn't get in trouble for any of that because it didn't get leaked out at all.
Yeah, I don't think people knew. He was never held accountable for any of that. There was a lot of that during Vietnam too, I have to say. Like, there was a lot of that stuff that happened during Vietnam.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
You know?
It's just so crazy. Like, I'm okay. Anyway.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I feel for people who really do struggle with PTSD. I do. We work with a lot of vets.
We treat PTSD. We do. We're both EMDR therapists. I mean, we work with veterans.
Yep. This people might be like, "You're wrong." No, this is not a PTSD response.
Nobody's going to argue with us on this one. This is not a PTSD response. Now, have I read all of the legal briefs and all of the evidence? No. But I am a professional domestic violence therapist, and I will tell you, there are a lot of veterans with PTSD that do not shoot their wives or kill people when they're overseas like that and show pictures of it with no remorse. That's not the same thing.
No.
Okay. So mad about that. So he basically says, Ramirez tells people later that he was fascinated when he witnesses this murder, but he does withdraw. He withdraws from family, and he dropped out of high school in 9th grade.
He dropped out of high school?
So Ramirez dropped out of high school. So he was affected somehow. It might have been that Mike ended up in an institution, because he may have gotten off for insanity but been put in an institution. That's possible. But there was some kind of a split in that relationship.
Do you think Ramirez... I mean, probably not. I was going to ask, do you think maybe he was like, I need to get away from this?
No.
Okay.
I will say, though, you can have a weird sociopathic bond where it's not necessarily an emotional connection, but there is certainly a traumatic bond between Ramirez and Mike.
Yeah.
And so when Mike went away, I don't know that Ramirez knows who he is without Mike. Ramirez's whole identity is centered around Mike. Does that make sense? So that's what I think was going on with him when he started to withdraw.
Mhm.
And let's talk about this, Nat, from a brain chemistry perspective, all of that stimulation fell off. So he
Mm.
witnesses a murder and then Mike's gone and he's not having anything to satisfy those urges. When I read Sociopath, right, which I'm going to get to soon,
Yeah.
that those urges, that kind of craving for that kind of stimulation can get overwhelming for these
Yeah.
folks. And I
Yeah.
think he was withdrawing, thinking a lot. He moves in with his sister Ruth, older sister Ruth, and her husband Roberto,
Okay.
an
How's rude?
obsessive peeping Tom.
Roberto is? Oh my
Okay,
God.
let me just like, okay, cousin,
How?
dad's abusive, cousin's nuts, right? We got all this stuff. So we're like, sister, maybe older sister.
I know. I
Not
was like,
her
how's
husband,
Ruth?
peeping Tom.
Does she have her stuff too?
No, not that I know of. Not that I
But
know.
she marries a peeping Tom.
But sister married a peeping Tom.
Well, and here's the thing. You and I both know that if someone's raised in abuse, oftentimes they're going to find someone who's also in some way, shape, or form abusive in their own way.
They all have a screw loose.
Yes.
Roberto, the peeping Tom husband,
Right. But he's not
right?
related,
His
mind you.
uncle. Well, it says, yeah, his uncle, but not blood related. This is a chosen crazy.
Yes. No. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Took Ramirez along with him. After Mike gets out of the mental hospital,
I hate all of them.
2 years later. So 2 years later,
Hmm.
Mike gets out of the hospital. He decides, you know what? I'm going to go too. It's a family time, family
Oh my
adventure.
gosh. I hate
Ramirez,
every single one of them.
Roberto, and Mike are now taking these walks and they're spying on women through their windows. Is that insane?
I hate them all.
Yep. So in 1982, when
Mhm.
Ramirez is 22, he moves to California and kind of settles in there.
Okay.
When he gets to California, he starts using cocaine, which became kind of his drug of choice.
Hmm.
And then he starts committing theft and burglaries to get money for his addiction for cocaine
Hmm.
use.
Hmm.
And he lived sort of between San Francisco and LA. And he'd go kind of back and forth, San Francisco, LA, back and forth.
Hmm.
Okay. So the murders started in 1984. So he was about 24 years old when the murder started. So you can see the clear escalation. I mean, it's a straight line up,
Yep.
right? I mean, the next logical thing is he's going to kill someone. Like this is a no-brainer. If he hasn't already, and I would argue he probably had even before this.
Right.
Okay. His first victim in 1984 was a 9-year-old Chinese American girl, and he killed her in the basement of her apartment building in the Tenderloin district in San Francisco.
Mm.
So she was with her 8-year-old brother looking for a lost dollar bill. Ramirez approached her and said that she should follow him to the basement to find it. And he beat, strangled, and raped her and then stabbed her to death with a switchblade.
Mm.
Okay. So, I mean, extraordinarily violent, definitely kind of a crime of opportunity, right?
Mhm.
Now,
Mhm.
this murder was not linked to Ramirez until 2009 by DNA. And then in 2016, officials disclosed there was maybe a second suspect,
Mm.
but they don't know who that suspect was. But they described the suspect as being juvenile at the time and had not been, they haven't publicly identified the suspect
Okay.
because the suspect was a juvenile at the time and they haven't brought charges because of lack of evidence. So
Mm.
here's the scary thing. What could we see him doing with a younger person? Doing the same thing Mike did. I could
Yeah.
totally see,
Yeah.
22, 24-year-old Ramirez picking up adolescents, especially adolescent boys, and
Hmm.
exposing them to all of this junk
Hmm.
because that's his model.
Mm.
So I think it's so interesting that there was DNA from a second person and that the person they think it was a juvenile at the time. That's not surprising to me.
No.
Okay, here's what's crazy about Night Stalker. about Ramirez.
Yep.
The ages and kind of the profiles of the victims are all different. Weapons are different. I mean, the situations are different. This is
Yeah.
not the kind of thing where he has a profile. He
No.
goes from murdering a 9-year-old Chinese American girl to
Mhm.
murdering a 79-year-old woman.
Right.
And he stabbed her. He did leave a fingerprint behind,
Mhm.
but he stabbed her. And this is when there starts to be kind of a pattern of him breaking into homes
Okay.
and doing this kind of stuff. And
He
what he would
slapped her
do,
bad.
he would kill people and then he would steal to pay his rent, but also to pay for drugs.
Okay.
9 months after this, again, there could have been murders in between. Okay. But what we know for sure, 9 months later, he kills 22-year-old Maria Hernandez
Mm.
outside of her home and he shoots her in the face. So now we have a weapon switch. Shoots her in the face with a 22 caliber handgun
Well,
after
and
she pulled into the
interesting
garage.
that he shoots her in the face.
In the face.
Same with Mike shooting his wife in the face.
Okay, interesting. I didn't make that connection. Yes. She survived because the bullet ricocheted off of the keys she had in her hand. So she lifts her hands to protect herself. She'd pulled into her garage. He came in when she pulled into her garage. That's what's so scary. I don't know if you ever get this. I get a little nervous when I pull into my garage. I'm like on alert.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm thinking.
100%.
And he came in, and so she played dead. So the bullet ricocheted off of her keys when she held her hands up to try to protect herself. She played dead until he left the scene.
So did any of her face get hit with the bullet?
I don't believe so, no.
Wow.
Yep. Inside the house, her roommate heard the gunshot, ducked behind a counter,
Hmm.
and sees Ramirez come into the house and into
Oh,
the kitchen.
Jesus.
When she raised her head to get a look at what happened, Ramirez was waiting and he shot her and killed her instantly.
Mm.
Yep.
So he shot and killed the roommate.
He shot and killed the roommate, but the woman in the car played dead and she survived.
Right.
Within an hour of that attack, he pulled a 30-year-old Veronica Yu out of her car in Montgomery Park and shot her with the 22, probably same gun, 22 caliber handgun and fled. She died at the hospital. This was 2 murders and an attempted third murder in a single day.
That is wild.
Yep. So now we're starting to get media involvement.
Yeah.
And he was described as curly haired with bulging eyes and wide spaced rotting teeth.
Mm.
And he just looks nasty. When you see pictures of him, like he
Oh
looks
yeah,
scared.
he's not great.
He doesn't look well.
No.
So again, we're seeing escalation because that's what happens. So a week later, he went into a home that he'd burglarized a year earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And he killed 64-year-old Vincent Zazzara in his sleep with a gunshot to the head. His wife, Zazzara's wife, 44-year-old Maxine Lavenia Zazzara, wakes up to this gunshot, as you would, right? He beat her and bound her hands, demanding to know like where her jewelry was. While he's going through the room looking for stuff, she got out of her ties that were on around her hands, got a shotgun from under the bed, which she was unaware was not loaded.
Oh
She
shoot.
pulled the trigger just after he turned around and saw her. It made him so angry he shot her 3 times with a handgun, killing her.
Oh.
Then he mutilated the body after that in a pretty horrific way, which we're not going to go into. The thing that's interesting about this, I'm not going to go into detail.
I'm reading the detail.
Because he is a sexual sadist. Okay. The thing that's interesting is she scared the shit out of him to a degree that he was unable to have the sexual feelings that he would normally have in a situation like this.
Because he couldn't believe that she got out and almost killed him.
100%. He couldn't, I mean, even his nervous system is engaged. But he kept a jewelry box containing a body part of hers.
Oh, he kept it?
At his apartment until his arrest.
Oh, okay.
So they found
Two body parts.
Two body parts, not boobs.
Can we just say they're her eyes?
Oh, I hate him so much.
I know he's the worst.
Put him in a jewelry box and kept it until his arrest as a souvenir. So this dude's just not well. He did leave a footprint at the scene. And
Okay.
those bullets matched his previous crimes. So you can kind of see how this is starting to line
Unravel
up.
for him.
Yeah, it's starting to unravel, and it's also starting to align for the prosecution, right? Because there's these little pieces that are the same. A week after that, oh no, a couple months after that. So almost 2 months after that, he goes back to Monterey Park, entered the home of 66-year-old Bill Doy and his disabled wife, 56-year-old Lillian Doy. He surprised the husband, shot him in the face
This
because,
whole like shooting in the face thing.
well, yeah,
I mean,
it's a
I
fixation.
get it.
It's a fixation. He
Yeah.
witnessed it.
That's his pattern.
That's the pattern. Well, it's one of the patterns.
One of
But
the
he gets into some other things too. But that's one of the
Cool.
patterns for sure. After beating the man into unconsciousness, he bound her, sexually assaulted her, and the man died. Now, he did not kill Lillian. He assaulted her, but he did not kill Lillian. So one of the things that's interesting in this case is he left some people alive. He left some people alive.
Why?
I think it's part of the sadism. Some of them get to live with what he did, just like he got to live with what he saw people do.
I hate him so much.
I know it's bad. It's real bad. Okay, 2 weeks after that, he drove a stolen car and he pulls up to the house of Mabel Bell, age 83, and her disabled sister, 81-year-old Florence Lang. He found a hammer in the kitchen and bludgeoned and bound Lang, then bound and bludgeoned Bell before using an electrical cord to shock them. So now we have a new thing that he's doing. Now, he did sexually assault both women, but then he used lipstick to draw a pentagram on one of the victims as well as on the walls of both bedrooms. Both women were found 2 days later alive, but unconscious and critically injured.
Yeah.
Belle died in the hospital from her injuries, and then Lang died like the next month.
Yeah.
These poor women are in their 80s. Like, come on, bro.
Literally, I'm sitting here, I'm like, you're going for people. I mean, the people above 66-year-old and then his disabled wife. I'm like,
well, this is the stalking.
Right. But you're going after people who can't defend themselves almost at all.
Oh, he's a chicken shit. He goes after children.
Like, you know what? Like, F right off, bro.
Children and the elderly. Children and the elderly. This is the pattern, if anything.
Yes.
Right? So anyway, he the next day, so he's speeding up, snuck into the home of 42-year-old Carol Kyle. He bound her 11-year-old son. He ultimately released the 11-year-old son to go find jewelry, money, that kind of stuff. He sexually assaulted the mom, Carol, and then he repeatedly ordered her not to look at him, telling her at one point he would cut her eyes out. He fled the scene after retrieving the child from the closet and binding the two together. He leaves both of them alive.
Wow.
So he did not kill either one of them. I wonder if it's because there's a little bit of a fixation with adolescent boys. I wonder if he feels like an adolescent boy and connected to adolescent boys. And so I suspect that's why he didn't hurt the 11-year-old boy.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and he might have some level of, like you said, like he sees himself as that, but also you kind of see this like with other serial killers when they have a specific target, they leave like other people alone.
Yes.
You know, like if someone's like hates women, like a brunette 5'5" woman, whatever.
Yeah.
But they have like a son and they like see the son kind of as themselves. You know, I wonder if that's some of this.
Well, it's interesting because he also didn't make the son see him kill her, right? Like he could have killed Carol right in front of her son. He didn't do that. He left them both alive.
Alive. Well, and I don't think he raped her in front of his son, her
Mm-mm.
son,
No, he sent the son to go find the jewelry and stuff.
while he did that. Yeah.
Again, not empathy, but there was something in his brain that wouldn't let him do that, which
In
is
front
weird.
of a kid. I know, it's very
It's weird,
strange.
but it's interesting.
And he, based on at least what I'm
Hmm.
seeing, has only sexually assaulted young women,
Yeah. Oh,
young girls.
well, let me look
I
at
mean,
that.
older people too, but like he hasn't, like he leaves, it seems like he leaves young boys alone.
He leaves young boys alone. He sexually assaulted the 81-year-old disabled woman, though. So I mean,
Right, but he doesn't, like, what I'm saying though is he sexually assaults little girls,
yes, but
but
no,
he doesn't sexually assault little boys. That's what I'm,
no, no, that's the thing that's fascinating to me. I'm
yeah,
starting to see this. And
yeah,
honestly, that didn't even occur to me until now as we're going in order.
yep, yep,
There's some trends that are kind of interesting.
yes.
So
So he
then
leaves little boys alone. He'll beat the crap out of men, but he doesn't
yes,
sexually assault any men or boys.
true. That is
Yep,
true.
yep,
And to our knowledge, he was not sexually abused that we know of. He was exposed to horrific things, but that we know of, he was not sexually abused.
yeah.
So he goes back to elderly women 2 months later. 75-year-old Mary Louise Cannon
Hmm.
found her asleep. He bludgeoned her and then stabbed her to death using a butcher knife. He did not sexually assault her. He
Okay.
repeatedly stabbed her after she was already dead. So again, weird, like sometimes shooting, sometimes stabbing, sometimes sexually assaulting, sometimes not. I mean, it feels to me like he's trying to get his nervous system riled up one way or the other, and he doesn't do the same things in a row very often, which is interesting, with the exception of shooting in the face a few times.
Well, and remind me, I mean, dad was a total dick and horrific.
Oh
Where
yeah.
was mom again?
Mom was, great question. I don't want to go too far up because I'll lose where I'm at, but
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm up there. I'm looking.
mom just had 5 kids
But it doesn't
and
say
was
much
abused.
about her.
Mm-mm. Nothing real specific about her.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Okay.
So 3 nights after that, so he goes in like fits and starts. Now, again, he could have been killing people all the way through, but it's
Right.
kind of like he takes like a month or two break and then he has a couple things right in a row.
Yeah.
So 3 nights later, he switches gears, breaks into a home and bludgeons a 16-year-old with a tire iron. And then he was looking for a knife, couldn't find one in the kitchen, and tried to strangle her with the telephone cord.
Mm.
He was startled to see electrical sparks coming from the cord, and the victim began to breathe. So he fled the house, believing that Jesus Christ had intervened to save her. The 16-year-old survives, but she needed 478 stitches
Mm.
to close the laceration in her scalp. So he attacked her with so much force with that tire iron. But when he saw the sparks and it freaked him out and she started to breathe, he was like, oh, nope, that's Jesus.
We can't
We're
mess
done
with
here.
him.
We're done here. Isn't that weird? But she survived. 16-year-old survived. July
Good.
July 7th, which is like the next day or 2 days later, goes
Hmm.
back to Monterey Park. The people of Monterey Park are like, we're
I
moving.
would move.
I would be gone. I'd be
I'd
in a
move.
hotel
Yeah. Bye.
for
Bye,
real.
Monterey.
And people would think that's overreacting, but I'm telling you right
Oh,
now,
hell no.
if there was something like this going on in my neighborhood or something, I'd be out.
Oh, I'd move 100%.
Well, I don't even know if I don't think moving's fast enough. I'd go stay in a hotel until they either moved on to another area or they caught him.
Right. And then I'd still maybe move.
Remind me, I have a story for you at the end that's
Okay.
interesting. So anyway, burglarized 60-year-old woman's house. I'm going to stop saying names because there's so many. Burglarizes 60-year-old's house, stomps in her face, kills her. Goes back to Monterey Park again. So he leaves, goes to two other neighborhoods, comes back to Monterey Park. So he has some kind of fixation with Monterey Park.
Mhm.
chose a 63-year-old woman, assaulted and handcuffed the woman, attempted to rape her and stole her jewelry. When
Mm.
she swore to him that he had taken everything that was valuable, he told her to swear on Satan. So Jesus Christ stopped him last time. This time he's telling the victim to swear on Satan. Yep.
Okay.
But she survived.
Good.
He left her alive. We don't know why. There's no rhyme or reason to this.
Yeah.
2 weeks later, he buys a machete. That's not going to end well, right?
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
So he chooses a home with a 66-year-old and a 68-year-old, burst into the couple's bedroom and starts going after him with the machete. He then killed them with the 22 caliber handgun and then further mutilated.
Mm.
Right? So then he takes the stolen stuff, drove to Sun Valley, LA, broke into another house, shot a sleeping 32-year-old man,
Mhm.
then raped and beat his 32-year-old wife.
Mm.
He found the couple's 8-year-old son before dragging him around the house to reveal and locate any of the valuable items. During that assault, he made the victim swear to Satan that she was not hiding money from him. Didn't kill the 8-year-old, didn't kill the wife.
I thought he did kill the wife. He didn't. He shot.
Mhm.
Oh, he just shot the husband.
Yep, just shot the husband. He assaulted her,
Interesting.
but he didn't kill her.
So well, I was just gonna say he kills more men than women.
He may have, I think he may have a little bit of a mom complex because he's not killing the moms when the sons are there.
That's what I'm saying.
That's interesting.
Yeah. He
Look at us
kills all,
unpacking him like the FBI.
I know he kills like all the men.
All the men.
Which I mean, if we look at it,
But then sometimes, okay, look at this then.
and sometimes he'll kill the wives too.
This was 2 weeks later. He broke into a home of a 30 and a 27-year-old man and woman couple,
Yeah.
into their bedroom, startled her. Now, maybe he killed her because he startled her. That could be. He
Yeah.
may have startled her before he killed the husband,
Yeah.
but he shot her in the face and then shot him in the neck and tried to flee. The husband fought back and avoided getting hit with 2 additional shots.
But the couple survived.
Before Ramirez escaped, they both survived.
Wow.
And it's interesting that Ramirez was in a hurry to get out. That's interesting. He
Mhm.
didn't want to fight a man. That's
Because he's
apparent.
chicken shit.
Well, and also was beaten by his father. So you see this kind of fear, I think, of men too, which is
Well,
fascinating.
but I wonder if that's why he tries to at least all the men.
Well, and I think he kills them too now because that's the only way he can assault the women.
Well, yes. Yes.
He can't assault the women with the husbands there. Are you kidding me?
But he doesn't kill every woman. That's what I'm saying,
No.
though.
But he doesn't kill every woman. He really doesn't kill the women when their sons are there.
Yeah.
Okay, here's another one. Okay, we're figuring him out now.
Mm.
2 nights later, Ramirez drove a stolen car to a different area. Okay.
Yeah.
Chose a house of 27-year-old woman and her husband, who's 31. He entered the house, goes to the master bedroom. He killed the sleeping husband with a 25 caliber handgun, handcuffed and beat the wife, forcing
Mhm.
her to reveal where the jewelry was. He
Mhm.
sexually assaulted her, made her swear on Satan that she would not scream during the assault. When the couple's 3-year-old son entered the bedroom, Ramirez tied the child up, continued to rape the mom.
Mhm.
But after he left the house, she was able to untie the son and went to the neighbors. So he did not kill the mom and he did not kill the son.
Mm-mm.
So Ramirez was watching the news. He's seeing the coverage of all this stuff in LA. It's getting a
Yeah.
little too hot in LA. People are like talking, probably arming themselves. I would be.
Yeah.
I would be having cameras, all the things, if not staying in a hotel at that point, especially if I lived in Monterey Park.
Yep.
He goes to San Francisco, goes into the home of 66 and 62-year-old couple, shot the husband, killed him instantly, beat and assaulted the wife, which is what he does. He shoots her, leaves her for dead,
Mm-hmm.
and then he wrote with her lipstick a pentagram and the phrase "Jack the Knife" on the bedroom wall.
Mm-hmm.
He again left a shoe print at the scene. So now They have 2 shoe prints
Yeah.
from a specific pair of shoes that ties him to 2 of the murders.
Yeah.
And it was a very rare shoe. Isn't that interesting? Rare
Mhm.
shoe. Only 6 of this pair of shoes, was made in the size 11 and a half.
Dang.
Only 1 shipped to a shoe store in LA.
Okay.
So, I mean, that is about as specific
As you can get with a pair of shoes.
with a pair of shoes. Yep. So, what the LA San Francisco mayor did,
Hmm.
the San Francisco mayor divulged the gun caliber and gave that kind of leak, which pissed off the detectives.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were afraid that he would destroy evidence because he has things, he has the shoes, he whatever. Ramirez, who was watching the news, dropped the sneakers over the Golden Gate Bridge that night and then
Dang.
remained in the area for a few days and goes to LA.
Well, dang it. They shouldn't have leaked that they had the shoes.
He was watching the news. We're almost done, people. Hang in there, okay? We've got our patterns going, right?
But that's a bummer that they shared that it's a specific shoe.
This is why, like in the Idaho case,
Yes, why they
they
didn't
weren't given
share
any information.
anything.
And as
Yes.
much as we want it, and I want all the information, if they release it, they
Then
open the door for the criminal. And the criminals watch the news just like we do,
yes.
especially if they're killing everybody.
And lawyers do, yeah.
Yes. Okay. This is interesting. So on August 24th, so this is like a couple weeks later, again, couple weeks, he's now south of LA. So I think this is further south than he had been
Okay.
thus far. Okay, so he's starting to get spooked a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
He goes to the home of a 45-year-old who's just returned from a family vacation. The 45-year-old man's son, 13-year-old James Romero, happened to be awake. While the family was asleep, he went outside of the house to retrieve a pillow that was in the truck that was locked. When outside, he heard a rustling noise. Assuming it was an animal, James went to investigate but did not notice anything out of the ordinary. He went to the garage to begin working on his mini bike when he heard Ramirez's footsteps outside the house. Thinking there was a prowler, James, after observing Ramirez through his bedroom window, went to wake his parents, and Ramirez fled the scene.
That's so scary.
James raced outside and noted the color, make, and style of the car and a partial license plate.
You know what?
13-year-old kid.
You go, bro.
So James, the kid, thought it was just a thief. He didn't know who this person was, but he found that information. Okay.
What a little badass.
I know. Okay, we're almost there, Nat. He's almost going to get caught, okay?
Dude, I mean, I'm here.
Are you here? I know your eyes are like wide open. Okay. I'm sorry, it's wordy, but we're getting there.
Well, I'm also reading some of the specifics of what he's done to some of these people, and it's nuts.
It's really bad. Can you see why I'm not? I mean, you can
we
get
can't
to it if you want to, but
no,
it's just not worth putting it into everybody's heads. You know, you're driving home from work. You don't need to know the specifics, okay?
No, just you can use your imagination.
Yeah, it's bad. It is
bad.
On the order of the Gainesville Ripper. That's what I will say. It's on the order of that. And that's all you need to know.
Yeah.
So, you know, he gets chased away by this 13-year-old, which is also fascinating. What's scary about it? I mean, whatever. But again, if Ramirez feels young, and I believe he feels very young in his brain is all jacked up.
Well, yeah, he's had like
he ran from that
TBI.
13-year-old.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating. So when that attack was aborted, he couldn't keep going. He broke into the home of a 30-year-old man and his wife, 29-year-old wife, through a back door. He entered the bedroom again, which is kind of his MO at this point. He woke up the husband and cocked the handgun. He shot the husband 3 times in the head before turning his attention to the wife. He identifies himself as the Night Stalker for the first time.
Right.
So he tells her that he's the Night Stalker. and forced her to swear she loved Satan as he beat her with his fists and bound her with neckties from the closet. He stole everything that he could. He sexually assaulted her. He demanded cash and jewelry and made her swear on Satan there was no more.
Mm.
Before leaving, he leaves her alive and he tells her, tell them the Night Stalker was here.
Oh, now he's got a complex.
Erickson untied herself. She's a badass. This 29-year-old fiance.
Yeah.
Untied herself, went to the neighbors for help. Surgeons removed 2 of the 3 bullets from her husband's head and he survived. Her
Wow.
husband survived. But now he's the Night Stalker. He's decided he's the Night Stalker.
Yeah.
Also, listen, you're supposed to go along with people when they have a weapon, right? And all this kind of stuff. If
Mhm.
you tell me to say I love Satan, you better beat me to death. And also, I am going to make you feel so bad about yourself using only my words. You may never
Yes.
recover. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, if somebody's in your home and doing this stuff to you, granted, the fact that she went along with it is probably why she lived.
Yeah.
But with all of this shit going on, I'm like, I just can't even with him.
No.
Satan nonsense. I'm not getting into that.
No.
Don't start nothing, won't be nothing.
Yep.
Right? That's our theme. That's our theme this week. Don't start nothing, won't be nothing. Okay. There are a few other victims that were alleged to have been connected, but the evidence was not strong enough to link him specifically.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. He told people in prison that he'd killed more than 20 people, and detailed a few other killings, but they weren't able to have concrete evidence. So Erickson, this badass chick, Erickson,
Mhm.
okay, her husband too, man, he survived getting shot 3 times in the head.
That's nuts.
So this is a tough ass couple, okay?
Yeah.
She gives a detailed description to investigators. And the police got a footprint outside of their home, out of the Romero home,
Mm-hmm.
which was, let me go back. Oh, yeah, from that home, that same home. They found the stolen Toyota truck. They got a single fingerprint from the rearview mirror, despite his careful efforts to like clean his car.
Yeah.
The print matched Ramirez, who was described by police as a 25-year-old drifter from Texas with a long rap sheet, right?
Right.
The identification, this is incredible, you guys. Like, just stick with me here. The identification of this fingerprint was a miracle because the fingerprint system had been recently installed. Also, the system containing the fingerprints was only for fingerprints of criminals born after January 1st, 1960. So when they passed the
Oh,
law
dang.
about fingerprints being stored in the system, it was only for offenders born after January 1st, 1960, only 2 months before Ramirez was born.
That's nuts.
If this thing was off by 2 months, they would not have identified him.
That's crazy.
Isn't that crazy? We were only 2 months and a birthday away
Oh my gosh.
from him largely continuing his spree.
Yeah.
Okay. So on August 29th, 1985, law enforcement officials put the mugshot up, the real scary mugshot that we're going to put on social media,
Yep.
from the arrest for auto theft in 1984. So they put this picture up and they say out loud, "We know who you are now, and soon everyone else will. There will be no place you can hide."
Boom.
The next day, he gets on a bus to go to Tucson, Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't know at this point. He's watching the news, but maybe not that close.
Yeah.
He doesn't know that he's become the lead story in every newspaper across California.
Yeah.
After failing to meet his brother due to him not being at home, he goes back to LA
Yeah.
on the 31st. He walked past police officers who were staking out the bus terminal in hopes of catching him before he could flee. After noticing a group of elderly Hispanic women who were scared and calling him El Matador, Ramirez saw his page on the front page of the newspaper
Mm.
and he panics and runs out of the store,
Mm-hmm.
runs across the freeway, attempted to carjack a Ford Mustang, but was pulled out by angry residents. So two angry residents are like,
They're
oh
like,
no,
oh, hell
not
no.
today, bro. Get out of the
Yeah.
car, right? He runs
No.
across the street, tries to take car keys from a woman named Angela De La Torre.
Mm-hmm.
Her husband witnesses this, hits Ramirez over the head with a fence post,
You know what?
and a group of 10 residents, including one of the guys who pulled him out of the car's two sons, they formed a group and they chased Ramirez down Hubbard Street in Boyle Heights. They
Good.
restrained him and relentlessly beat him. At 8 a.m., police were called over to the disturbance, and they didn't know what was happening. They just knew there was a disturbance.
Mm-hmm.
They took him into custody.
Good.
Crime scene over. He's in
Yeah.
custody.
My goodness.
Nat, what are you thinking?
I feel like I'm watching the documentary all over again.
I know, right?
That's just nuts. I mean, I've kind of chimed in here and there of my thoughts on him, but like my immediate thought when they beat the crap out of him, I'm like, well, yeah, bro. Sorry, sucks to suck,
He has a really interesting thing that I want to pick your brain about.
Okay.
When our guys come in, right,
Mm-hmm.
they have this really interesting disconnect between their wives, their moms, their daughters,
Mm-hmm.
right? They have maybe a lot of respect for their mom. Most of them love their mom. Some of them don't have a great relationship, but they still would protect their mom,
Yeah.
right? They might do something bad to their wife.
Yeah.
They would kill someone who did it to their daughter,
Yeah.
right? This is just, we see this every single
All the
day.
time. Yeah.
Okay. And they also wouldn't hurt an animal. That's the other thing we hear all the time is, oh God, no, I would never hurt an animal. Now we know statistically they do sometimes, but the
They say they
perception,
don't.
they say they don't. And the perception is interesting, right?
Yeah.
What I'm seeing with him, and I want to know if you see this and what you think, he has something about mothers and sons for sure,
Oh, absolutely.
because he's not killing the mother of sons when he knows there's a son there. And he
Well,
also didn't kill a 13-year-old boy who was actively chasing him, which would have been real easy to kill that kid.
right. Well, I think it goes to what you said earlier. I think he sees himself as a kid. I mean,
Yes.
he had insane brain injury when he was a child.
Mm-hmm.
So there's, probably significant traumatic brain injury symptoms.
Yeah.
The trauma he endured, the substance use and abuse
Mm.
that he went through as a kid and as he got older. I think he's like somewhat locked in a kid's body, or like it's like a kid version of him locked in a adult body,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And there's not much that's said about his mom. And so I don't know if there's like you said, like not necessarily an empathy, but like a weird protection for moms of sons. Because it was his dad who was super abusive,
Yes.
right? And
And
so
dad abused mom too. So dad abused the kids and mom.
yes. So you think of that, I think there might be something in his brain that's like, well, it's not that he's protecting them, but he's not going to harm them more than he already has
Yes.
because probably of his own mom
That's
and
what I'm thinking too.
and her role in his life, and that she was also a victim.
Yes.
And I that's what I was saying earlier too. Like he kills almost in every single situation, he kills the husband. And I do think you're right that it's obviously to get to the woman.
Yes.
But I also think it's because they're men.
Well, and I also have significant grandma questions. Okay. Because I think he targeted older women because they are easier to target.
Yeah.
And he targeted disabled people on a few occasions because they were easier to target.
Mm-hmm.
But I also feel like there could be a little something there too, because that's a little bit persistent in terms of who he goes after.
Yeah. One, we talked about at the beginning, like he doesn't really have a pattern. There's not like a specific type that he goes for, but there kind of is.
Yeah.
There kind of is. It's jumpy. It doesn't make a ton of sense, but when I think of like his family history,
Yes.
it makes a little bit more sense to me.
Absolutely.
You
The
know?
trial and conviction are not without drama as well. So
Right.
his
Of
whole
course.
thing is super, super dramatic.
Mm-hmm.
At his first hearing, he yelled, "Hail Satan."
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're still seeing this satanic fixation. It's not uncommon for schizophrenia and psychosis to have religious themes, especially with a Catholic upbringing.
Right.
It's a vulnerability in the brain and it gets all warped with all of this stuff. And remember, he was tied to a crucifix in the cemetery as a
Right.
punishment.
Right.
So he is the most janky theology psychopathy intersection I've seen in a while, maybe
Yeah.
ever, right?
Yep.
So when he was in jail, a couple of the employees heard he was planning to shoot the prosecutor with a gun that he wanted to smuggle into the courtroom. So they had to put a metal detector out there specifically for him and
Mm.
and search people.
Mm.
Now, this is interesting. One of the jurors, almost a month into the trial, didn't come to the courtroom one of the days. She was found shot to death in her apartment. The jury is freaked out because they're thinking, did Ramirez have anything to do with this?
Right.
Right? But ultimately, authorities determined he was not responsible for the death. She had been shot and killed by her boyfriend, who later committed suicide.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
that's crazy that that happened
yes. And then
at
the
the same
alternate
time.
juror who replaced Phyllis Singletary, who was murdered by her
Yeah.
boyfriend, was too afraid to return to her home. So she didn't go back to her home during the trial.
Mm.
He was convicted in September of 1989 of all 43 charges that he was charged with. So they had lights out evidence, all the things.
Mhm.
13 counts of murder, like I said in the front of the episode, 5 attempted murders, 11 sexual assaults, 14 burglaries. During the penalty phase, he was sentenced to death in the gas chamber. He said to
Mm.
reporters, "Big deal. Death always went with the territory. See you in Disneyland."
Bye.
This was the most expensive trial in the history of California until O.J. Simpson,
Of course it was.
right? That's a good use of our taxpayer dollars. Listen,
Of course OJ did
donate
that.
to nailing him, you know?
Mm-hmm.
While he was awaiting trial, this is just so weird. He met Sean Penn in jail,
Oh
allegedly.
yeah, I saw that.
Isn't that nuts?
Yeah.
Ooh, so scary. Ramirez had absolutely no sympathy and was like wanted to die on death
Mm.
row. So no big deal. And then we have some convict chaser women, on and off. When he died, he was engaged to a 23-year-old writer.
Mm-hmm.
So he tried to appeal a couple times, unsuccessful, as we would expect.
Yep.
So I think we understand his psychology. We got the crime, we had lights out evidence. I think we've got the psychology kind of nailed with somebody like this. There was really one outcome of this whole
Yeah.
thing. He was going
Yeah.
to get caught, he was going to be put to death or get killed by a homeowner or something like that eventually.
Absolutely.
What in the world can we take away from this case? Is there any heart in this case besides, the bravery of some of the victims who, survived?
I don't have a lot of heart for him, aside from the obviously, like I said before, the fact that he was significantly abused.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I guess that would be it though. Like if I really had to dig deep for the heart piece specifically for the perpetrator, it would be that he was exposed to insane stuff. I mean, he had zero chance of being okay. He had zero chance of
Mm,
like his dad was super abusive. Then his cousin Mike took him in and showed him
mm,
horrendous stuff. Like
mm.
he just had a 0% chance of being okay. Like
Yeah.
none.
Even if I will tell you, and now I know you agree with this, Even if a therapist had gotten a hold of this kid at 15,
Oh,
16, 17,
it wouldn't have mattered.
I don't know that it would have mattered.
It wouldn't have mattered because everyone else around him, there was not a single human that was positive for him in his life.
No, and he wouldn't have been amenable for treatment. His brain wouldn't have allowed him to change.
Well, no. And you think of the brain injury that he went through.
Mhm.
I mean, that's no
Oh,
joke
yeah.
when you're that young, you know?
Mm-mm. No,
So I just don't think this guy really had a chance at being at all okay or quote unquote normal.
no.
I think the hard thing is, and this is for any criminal situation, like
Mm.
we do know what's right from wrong. We just have to care. And so, like, this guy
Yeah.
didn't care. That was part of this
No.
too. We've talked about this in other cases where there's just no empathy. We talked about it in the Colorado Springs woman case, right? She did not care about her life at all.
Mm-mm.
And so that's this guy. He's like, I'll just keep going until I get caught. And he literally said that.
Well, in a true blue, 100% of the way, far end of the spectrum, psychopath does
Mhm.
not care. They'd prefer to not be in jail, but they don't care enough to even coach them how to not be in jail. They just don't
No,
care.
they just don't care.
And again, this is a microscopic portion of the population. This is not everyone.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
continuum.
Yeah.
It's not everyone with schizoid personality disorder. That's not the thing. But I
No.
do think one of the takeaways from a prevention perspective is we cannot, I don't want to scare the crap out of anybody. That's not the goal. But prevention is about being a little bit vigilant. So,
Mhm.
my husband, we laughed so hard when we first got together because I was raised by very heads up people. I mean, it's like you lock your doors, it's a lock and load mentality a little bit.
Right.
My husband was not. My husband's also huge. He just was not scared of those kinds of things, right? So their
Right.
door would sometimes be unlocked. He grew up in more rural areas. He certainly didn't grow up in the city. And so when
Mhm.
we first got together, I remember I went with Garrett back to his apartment one time we were dating, and his door was completely unlocked.
Mm.
Just unlocked. He was living in Lafayette, not the nicest apartment complex either. And
Mhm.
his door was just unlocked. And we we walked in and I was like, how
Bro.
how do you even like what is happening?
Right.
It was so weird. And he goes, yeah, I mean, we just didn't really like lock doors as a kid. That's just not like what we
Yeah.
did.
Not a thing.
And he wouldn't lock it. I don't know about you, Nat, but I typically have my door locked when I'm home. My
Yeah.
husband doesn't always think about it. I always lock the door, right?
Yeah.
The bottom line is, and we know about you with the garage door. We've talked about that before, Preston leaving the door open. And he just
Oh
goes
my
out and
God.
closes the door, but he doesn't obsess about it for the next three
No.
days like you
Right.
would, right?
Right.
We do need to protect ourselves, and criminals are opportunists. They just are. Whether it's a serial
Mhm.
killer, burglar, whatever, they don't want to mess with a security system. They don't want to mess with a big dog. They don't want to mess with a locked door. 9 times out of 10, they're going to go for the easiest target.
Yeah.
And we do see this with this guy.
Yeah.
And whether he felt camaraderie or not with a kid, he wasn't trying to fight men or boys. He really
Mhm.
wasn't. He would kill them, but he wasn't trying to fight anybody.
No.
And so and when he
It's
was
ridiculous.
confronted, he fled.
Yeah, he ran. Well, that's that little
Right.
boy part of him, I think.
I think it is, but also criminals don't actually want to work that hard. They want it to be opportunistic. They want to be able to get the upper hand and they want to be successful because
Mhm.
not being successful, even if you don't care about your own life, means you go to jail. So he
Mhm.
didn't care about his own life, but even he was not thrilled to go to prison,
No.
right? That's why he ran from the convenience store when they spotted him.
Right.
So that's one of the takeaways from this one is you just don't know who's around. And so you don't have to like live in fear, but like lock your damn door,
Yes.
have a security system,
Yes.
look alive, people. Just look alive.
Look alive. Do what's good for you. Protect yourself. Do the
Absolutely.
basics.
Mhm.
Do at least the bare minimum and then maybe a little extra just to be mindful,
Absolutely.
you know?
And I think the other piece that is a little bit heartwarming in this case are the neighbors that came together and beat the shit out of him. I gotta say,
Yeah, no, like they like band of brothers. I don't know if that's the
band of
correct
brothers.
phrasing. But it's like, you came together. You didn't know each
It's
other before,
heartwarming in
but
a weird way,
I know. Well, it's like, you know, you guys probably didn't know each other before, and now you like changed history a little bit. So,
There was a fire that started not too far from my folks, and it was one of those things that starts fires in California frequently. It was like I'm thinking of Friends, transponder or whatever, and it
hmm
sparked, and it started a little grass fire
hmm
in an area that could have gotten bad probably.
Sure.
So all of a sudden, my mom, of course, sees this because Tina is Johnny on the spot, man. Tina doesn't miss a thing, right?
Right.
So she sees this, she's alerting people. All of these men went charging up the hill with shovels to put the fire out. And they did. The somebody finally brought a fire extinguisher. The fire department got out there, but they had the fire pretty much out before they got there.
Dang.
So I share that to say sometimes we have to help ourselves.
Yeah.
And I kind of love that the neighbors just, I mean, I don't know that they had to beat him up. I'm not mad about it though. But I think getting him
They had to beat him up. Who was going to stop him?
well, yeah, and I think but them banding together to kind of contain him and end this whole thing, um, it's pretty amazing.
Oh, for sure. They changed history.
They changed history in that moment. And so we tell you so often not to intervene yourself, but I have so much respect for those people just
Yeah.
deciding like not today, like we're
Yeah.
not going to keep doing this and there's enough of us,
Right.
we're going
Yep.
to put a stop to it. And so well
Yep.
done neighbors.
Thank you for your service.
Little block party. We're just going to jump on a serial killer and hold him down.
Exactly.
You know what?
Exactly.
Do you?
They might have not known who they were doing that to initially either,
Yeah, I don't know that they did.
you know?
I don't know that they did, but they witnessed him like try to carjack someone, try to take somebody's keys, like all this stuff, and they were like, absolutely not.
Yeah, we're done.
I don't know what street you think you're on, sir, but you're not
I
going
know.
to mess
We're
around with
done.
our
We're
people.
done with that. Yeah.
We are done with that. So anyway, I hope you guys are ready to do something calming, reground yourself, bring your blood pressure back down.
Mhm.
You can find so many more details out there that we didn't cover, some on purpose and some just because you can find them.
Yeah.
But that is the case of the Night Stalker.
Thanks for sharing, Janine.
You're so welcome. And we will see y'all next week for new cases and a new mini.
As always.
Bye, forensic friends. I'm Janine.
And I'm Nat.
And as always, thanks for listening and join us next week for more crime, psychology, and heart.